Hello everybody, my name is Star Wars Boy, how are you? And welcome back to the channel for a brand new Star Wars Battlefront 2 video. Last week we went over a couple of reinforcements that I really wanted to see in the Battlefront 3, and today we are going to be doing the same thing for the heroes. Not only will we be going over heroes, but we'll also be going over possible skins that these heroes can have if they do. Before I start the video, I just want to say that this video will contain spoilers for the Mandalorian. So if you did not see the Mandalorian, be sure to click off right now and go watch that first. Also, only a small percentage of viewers are actually subscribed, so if you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe. It's completely free and it helps out the channel. Also, thank you guys for 500 subscribers. We just reached it on Monday and it means a lot. Anyways, let's get into the video. Now, the way we're going to be doing this video is I'm going to be dividing it into 3 parts. First, we're going to be looking at heroes from the Clone Wars, then the Galactic Civil War, and finally the sequel trilogy. The first hero that instantly comes to mind, which we didn't get, is Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka is probably one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars and was a massive part in the Clone Wars. Plus, she would make a really unique hero with her dual lightsabers. Plus, she holds them inverted, which is also a really cool running animation. She would have a lot of skins, including her green lightsabers, blue lightsabers, and even white lightsabers, having some of the most unique customization options in the game. She's a massive part of Star Wars, especially in 2020, and if she doesn't get added to a Battlefront 3, I guarantee a lot of people will be upset. Now, moving on, a perfect counter to Ahsoka Tano would be Asajj Ventress. She, just like Ahsoka, has 2 lightsabers and is shown to be pretty fast and agile in the Clone Wars. Currently, the hero roster in Battlefront 2 is Yoda, Anakin, Obi-Wan, with Grievous, Darth Maul, and Count Dooku, which is pretty good. However, they are all pretty much the same, as they all have the same sprint speed. But Ahsoka and Ventress could be slightly faster than them, or even more faster with a special ability or something. These guys would make excellent heroes, and I'd love to see them, and it's almost guaranteed that we'll somehow get them in a Battlefront 3. The next hero we'd all love to see is Quigon, who has never actually made an appearance in a Battlefront game as far as I know, other than mods. Quigon has a lot of screen time in The Phantom Menace, and the fact that he hasn't been in a Battlefront game is pretty unfortunate. That means you'll never be able to recreate Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. However, I do think that Battlefront 3 would introduce Qui-Gon as a hero. I mean, I guarantee that Liam Neeson would love to return to do the voice acting, and they could just make him a really interesting character. One that has more passive abilities than offensive, because that's how Qui-Gon is. The next hero that we really need to see is Jedi Master Mace Windu. Mace Windu is loved by many because he's played by Samuel L. Jackson, and who doesn't love Samuel L. Jackson? He served a massive part in the Clone Wars and the prequel era. I feel like his abilities would be pretty offensive, as he's one of the darker Jedi. He'd have many appearances like robed and a general outfit. And plus, it's Samuel L. Jackson with a purple lightsaber in Battlefront 3. What more could you ask for? An iconic bounty hunter which has still not made its debut in a Battlefront game is Cad Bane. Cad Bane was introduced in the Clone Wars and has proved to be one of the most skilled bounty hunters in Star Wars. He infiltrated the Jedi Temple and took a holocron. That is just really cool. He also has amazing rocket boots, which would be an awesome thing to have for him. He would have a pistol, which is basic, I guess, but he would have a lot of awesome abilities, which I need to see in a game. There are some really talented modders that have made excellent Cad Bane mods, and I think that with the resources DICE gets, they could make an amazing Cad Bane in a Battlefront 3. Another bounty hunter which we have yet to see in an EA title, which was in Battlefront 2005, is Jango Fett. Jango Fett would make a really interesting character, regardless if they give him one pistol or even two. I imagine he'd play kind of like Boba Fett, however, he'd still have a pistol over a burst rifle, and I'd just love to see that. They could give him multiple different abilities that Boba Fett doesn't have, and they could just spice up the gameplay, as you could choose whether to play as Boba Fett or Jango Fett. Another really cool hero, which I think would make an amazing inclusion to a game, would be Padme Amidala. Now, judging by the ISB agent's face and leaked voice lines from Grievous, Padme was somewhat in development before Battlefront 2 was cancelled. I think that playing as Padme on Geonosis or Naboo would just make us so happy, and we need to see her in a Battlefront 3 as she's such a big part in the prequels. Another hero we need, and I mean need, in a Battlefront 3 is Captain Rex. Captain Rex has proved himself more than worthy after his contribution in the Clone Wars and Rebels. He would have a lot of different outfits, such as his Phase 1 and Phase 2, and his unhelmeted appearance, and maybe an appearance from Rebels since he's still kicking ass after accelerated aging. And come on, I think it would be really cool to see his face with Tamara Morrison's in a Battlefront 3. Another hero that we desperately need, especially after 2020, is Bocek Tan. Again, just like Ahsoka, 2020 was Bocek Tan's moment. Not only was she a big part in Clone Wars Season 7, but she also was a major part in The Mandalorian, helping Din Djarin get the child back. Now, she would honestly be really cool to see whether they give her a jetpack or not. However, I can honestly say that I hope they do, whether you give her the Darksaber as an ability or just don't give it to her at all. She now has a live action appearance, which I think makes adding her a lot easier. One of the hard things about adding characters from the Clone Wars is nailing their appearance in live action, and I think that The Mandalorian really did that well. So adding her in a Battlefront 3 would just make sense. Now, a villain that's on everyone's mind is Vizla. Vizla would have one of the most interesting combos in all of Battlefront, having a lightsaber and a jetpack. I mean, come on, that's so cool. Plus, he would not only have any lightsaber, but the iconic dark saber, because he at one time did wield it. Vizla was the leader of Death Watch, and I think having him as a villain with the Separatists would just make a really good inclusion to the game, as he would be the most unique character that would be ever added into a Battlefront game. Now, before I end the prequel segment, I wanted to make an honorable mention to Plo Koon and Savage Opress. Let me start with Plo Koon. Plo Koon is probably some of everyone's favorite Jedi, as he is shown to be very remorseful towards his clones, and it makes Order 66 hurt even more. He would have appearances just like every Jedi, with a general appearance and a Jedi robes appearance, and I just think that after his status in the Clone Wars, he would make a very worthy inclusion to a Battlefront 3. Savage Opress is a really powerful brute in the Clone Wars, and come on, if there was a hero showdown in a Battlefront 3, him and Maul would make a very cool duo together. Now, moving on to the original trilogy, and I was honestly surprised in how many heroes and villains could be added in from the original trilogy, and it's kind of tied with the prequels, which really did surprise me. Starting off with the first two, which is two that we failed to see in a Battlefront 2, is of course Jyn Erso and Director Krennic. I honestly thought these guys would come in as a surprise with the Scarif update, however they didn't. I was really disappointed when Krennic didn't come, as Krennic was one of my favorite heroes in all of Battlefront history. He had a really satisfying blaster, which is like one of the only blasters in a Battlefront game to use a reload feature. He was really unique, and I would kill to be able to play him in a new Battlefront game. Jyn Erso was really good as well. Being able to turn her SMG into an assault rifle was just something extraordinary. Plus, her trenchant attacks were awesome. These guys would make a very cool inclusion in a Battlefront 3, and I'd expect them honestly to be at launch. Now, while I mentioned Jin and Krennic, I'm going to have to put in Nien Nunb, Greedo, and Dengar, which are all heroes and villains from Battlefront 2015, which did not survive until Battlefront 2. Nien Nunb technically is in the game, as you can play as Sulistans as the Assault class, and you can play as Rodians. However, it's just not the same as playing as Nien Nunb, Greedo, and Dengar. These were some of my favorite characters in Battlefront 2015, and the fact that DICE made such obscure characters from the original trilogy into household names is just something incredible. Two heroes that I have to mention right off the bat is Moff Gideon and Mando. The Mandalorian is in Fortnite before a Battlefront game. I mean, that's sad. That's very sad. The Mandalorian would make such a unique character. Whether you give him the Darksaber or not, he would have a ton of cool abilities. You could give him the Beskar Spear, which he uses against Moff Gideon, a jetpack, flamethrower, his rockets. You could give him a bunch of abilities, and everyone would love to play as him. I mean, come on. If he had a "This is the way" emote, I'm sure everyone would spam it. Moff Gideon would be the perfect counter to Mando, whether you give him his Darksaber as a primary or just ability. He is shown to be pretty good with it in The Mandalorian while versing Din Djarin, and honestly, Moff Gideon is just such a good villain in The Mandalorian that I think we need him in a Battlefront game. He has deserved it, especially after having a stroke after seeing Luke Skywalker. He really needs to have a break and be put in the game. Now, there are two heroes that are not from Star Wars films that I just had to mention, as they've made such an impact on the single player world that they deserve to be in a multiplayer game. And I am, of course, talking about Cal Kestis and the Second Sister. The Second Sister is probably the coolest Inquisitor, as she's the only one that doesn't use her lightsaber as a helicopter, which is fucking stupid. The Second Sister is really intimidating and is honestly a pretty hard boss to beat in Jedi Fallen Order. And come on, Cal Kestis is the main protagonist of that game. What more could you want? He could have various different abilities with different lightsabers, and I think that a lot of people would choose him regardless if you give him two blades, a dual blade, or even one. Cal Kestis was my favorite character in all of Jedi Fallen Order, other than of course Darth Vader, and I think he deserves to be in a Battlefront 3. Now, Battlefront 2 did an amazing job with taking stuff from the Clone Wars TV show and putting it straight into Battlefront 2. We got a bunch of stuff like ARC Troopers and Commando Droids. However, they didn't really do this with Star Wars Rebels. The only thing that we technically got from Star Wars Rebels is the ISB agent. However, there are a couple heroes that could be added, and I can think of four. The first two are obviously Thrawn and Ezra. Thrawn getting name dropped in The Mandalorian has caused a lot of hype for his character, and we'll likely see him in the future of Star Wars, so adding him to a Battlefront 3 just makes sense. And Ezra would obviously be a perfect counter, as these two go toe-to-toe a lot in that show. Ezra has his green lightsaber with his cut hair, and his long blue hair with his blue lightsaber, and I think that these two appearances would be really good for him. The two other characters from Rebels that I did mention are Kanan and the Grand Inquisitor, mainly because these two are going toe-to-toe all the time in Season 1. Kanan has proved himself worthy during Season 1 and 2, and especially in 3 and 4, as he's probably the best character in that show. The Grand Inquisitor is also a pretty intriguing character in the first season, as he does a lot, and he's honestly such a foil to the Rebels' plans that I think that out of all the other Inquisitors, other than of course the Second Sister, he's the second most worthy of being added. Now moving on to the sequel trilogy, and there are not nearly as many options for the sequel trilogy as there are in the prequels and originals. I counted 12 characters for the prequel trilogy and only for the sequel trilogies, so I'm going to name the ones that I think just should be added because there's no one else. The first characters are of course Poe and Hawks. I honestly thought these guys would go into the game, as Poe does have a lot of cosmetic options, believe it or not. Plus, he technically already is in Battlefront 2, as he has his own starfighter in Starfighter Assault and his hero starfighters. However, of course, he did not come, and BB-8 was a hero instead. I honestly think that in a Battlefront 3, Poe would be a pretty cool character to see. Whether you keep BB-8 in the game or not, which I definitely think they will do, Poe would have some pretty cool abilities, maybe even be able to call in an airstrike. Hux is a counter to Poe that we see throughout the films, and Hux was pretty much robbed of screen time in episode 9, so I do think that they should add him into the game, as he was a prominent villain in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Now, just like I incorporated stuff from Rebels, I honestly tried to incorporate heroes and villains from Star Wars Resistance, and I somehow did. Commander Pryor is honestly an interesting character. You can give him pretty basic abilities and still make him a fun character to play. In case you don't know who Commander Pryor is, he's essentially a gold Captain Phasma that does a lot more in the show than Captain Phasma does in the movies. I honestly think that just adding him in would be pretty good, as if you add him in, that means that you can add another character to take him on, and that character would be Zori Bliss. She was in The Rise of Skywalker for a love interest for Poe, and did help in the plot, and did participate in the Battle of Exegol. Honestly, her appearance looks pretty cool. I'd just like to see her in a Battlefront 3 game. She could be pretty garbage, I don't really care. However, if they could make some unique abilities with her, especially with that special chip she gives to Poe, maybe it could act as some special ability or even some passive ability. I don't know, I'd just really like to play her. So that is gonna be it for this video, guys. I have another one of these videos coming up on hero skins we need for Battlefront 3. And honestly, this video was really fun to make. I really enjoyed it. As the time this video is going up, it's either the 24th or the 25th. So on behalf of the channel, I wish all of you viewers happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Bye. And may the Force be with you always.